All right, also breaking today and related to the lead story, the U.S. is responding to Iran proxies who are saying that they're attacking because of what's happening in the Middle East. And today, Israel was formally accused of committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. Now, the charge came from South Africa, right? Interesting because of the history of apartheid there. In the ICJ, which is in The Hague, the body and also the city is called The Hague, okay? So that's why people always say The Hague. Bibi Netanyahu denies the charges. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called the charges meritless. Will international pressure on Israel change the direction of the war? Now, that's not the right question, because this is about what legally they find as standards. A quick note, then we get into the debate, all right? This is about feel. Does it feel like Israel is doing too much? Okay, that's about proportionality of force. That's the strongest argument here for someone to bring in the ICJ. Genocide is not. Why? Because you would have to prove that there is a known animus and a desire to eradicate a specific group of people. Now, you will say, well, but isn't that de facto from what they're doing right now on the ground? They're trying to kill only Palestinians. But was their plan and their intention to eradicate a people? Israel says, no, we were attacked first, and we are responding. So that takes us to proportionality. And here there is a risk of a subjective test, which is what? Well, here's the language, okay? The rule of proportionality requires that the anticipated incidental loss of human life, meaning what you thought you were going to wind up doing in terms of killing people that are non-combatants, is excessive in relation to, this is the key part, the concrete and direct military advantage expected from the destruction of a military objective. Meaning what? This is a balancing test. It is subjective. What is the value to Israel of its assumed benefit of going after Hamas versus what it costs in human life? Subjective. Let's hear the case on both sides. Former Special Envoy for Combating Antisemitism and Delegitimization, Noa Tishby. Noah, what do you make of, first, let's talk about the news. What happened today in response to the Houthis? They say if there's ceasefire in Palestine, we wouldn't have to do this. What is your take on the relation of the kinetic activity today to the war in the Middle East?
Well, first of all, as Hillary Clinton said, there was a ceasefire on October 6th. And what we need to remember is that all of this is happening because there was peace coming to the Middle East. And Iran would not have that. So between the Abraham Accord and Israel and the Gulf states, and between the conversations that was very public between Saudi Arabia, the United States, and Israel, Iran felt like it was being left out. And they basically decided to destabilize the entire region. That started with a Hamas attack, continued with Hezbollah attacking Israel every single day, which is something that is not talked about at all in the news in America, and continuing with the Houthis attacking over 130 American targets in that region. So obviously, they're trying to poke the bear and trying to destabilize the entire region. This all happened because peace was coming to the region, but they did not want that. When you look back at every conflict in the region, you will look back and you will find Iran.
But now, look, it's an easy argument to make that Iran is the current head of the snake. In terms of the response to the snake, the case before the ICJ is assumed to be this is too much for too long. And if you want to root out Hamas, go ahead and do it. But do it with specificity as opposed to the overwhelming number of casualties being civilian and disproportionately, based on any subjective measure, children. Do you believe that Israel has overdone its response and killed too many innocents, even with the objective of rooting out a known terror organization?
Every innocent life that is lost is hurting every Israeli that I know and that you can find. This is not what this is about. Israel did not start a war, did not want this war, and is definitely not committing a genocide. Israel was dragged into a war it did not want. To your case of proportionality, Hamas knew exactly what they were doing. They sacrificed Gaza in order for them to advance their jihadi agenda of slaughtering as many Jews as they possibly can. The case in front of the International Court of Justice is preposterous. It is unbelievable that Israel is being accused of a word that was created to describe the Holocaust and the systematic massacre of Jews in the Holocaust. Now, I don't want to talk about proportionality without talking about, when you look at the number of cases of innocent deaths of Afghanistan that the United States have caused, the numbers are way higher. War is a terrible thing. Israel did not want that war, did not ask for this war, and now having to stand trial for a war it did not want, for genocide, which it's not committing.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.